Before we begin our journey into the quiet aisles of commerce, take a moment to settle in. Find that perfect spot beneath your blanket. Let your shoulders drop and feel the tension melt away from your jaw. Get comfortable, snuggle down, and let the gentle hum of the world's largest industry be your guide into deep relaxation. Tonight, we explore a financial mystery that happens right under our noses, the paradox of the supermarket. How can a business so vast, so essential, survive on such a vanishingly small margin? We're going to glide through the empty aisles, listen to the low hum of the refrigerators, and uncover the high-stakes billion-dollar secrets these giants use to stay alive. We'll explore the vast, silent armies of robots sorting inventory in the dark, the data-driven decisions that save them from devastating food waste, and the complex economics of shelf space that makes every inch of the store a battlefield. It's time to settle in, close your eyes, and let this strangely comforting story of commerce and efficiency drift you to sleep. Towers of polished apples, rows of brightly colored cereal boxes stretching into the distance, and refrigerators humming with thousands of gallons of milk. It feels like a license to print money. The average shopper pushes their cart through these aisles, assuming that the entity selling them their weekly sustenance is capturing a significant portion of the bill as profit. However, this visual dominance is a mirage. The modern supermarket operates on a fundamental paradox that defies conventional business logic. To the outside observer, it appears to be a juggernaut of commerce. It is an industry of immense scale, generating staggering revenue that reaches into the trillions of dollars, yet it survives on some of the thinnest profit margins in the global economy. This creates a cognitive dissonance in the business world. In technology, software companies often enjoy profit margins of 20 to 30%. In pharmaceuticals, margins can soar even higher. Yet the companies that feed the population, providing the most essential product on Earth, balance on a knife's edge. This high-volume, low-margin reality shapes every strategic decision, from store layout and labor scheduling to supplier negotiations and technological investment. This chapter introduces the core financial realities and performance metrics that define success and failure in grocery retail, setting the stage to explore how these giants of commerce navigate a landscape where every fraction of a cent is a battleground for survival. Quantifying the scale and the squeeze to grasp the supermarket paradox, one must first appreciate the sheer scale of the industry, which stands in stark contrast to its razor-thin profitability. We are not talking about small business economics here, we are discussing the macroeconomics of survival. In 2024, supermarkets in the United States generated a colossal $1 trillion in total sales. This number is difficult to visualize. It represents a significant chunk of the national GDP, driven by the biological necessity of eating. When we break this down to the level of the individual store, the velocity of money is breathtaking. This translates to an average weekly sales figure of $711,806 for a typical supermarket. Imagine the logistics required to process nearly $750,000 in sales every 7 days. It requires a constant inflow of trucks, a ceaseless army of stockers, and a battery of checkout lanes running non-stop. Yet this massive top-line revenue is almost entirely consumed by costs. The cash register may be ringing, but the money is flowing out the back door almost as fast as it comes in the front. After accounting for the cost of goods sold, labor, rent, utilities, and taxes, the average net profit margin is a mere 1.6%. This is the golden number of the industry, a figure so small that it leaves zero room for error. To put this into perspective, for every $100 worth of groceries a customer purchases, the store's final, take-home profit is only about 1.60. Consider the implications of a $1.60 profit on a $100 cart. If a customer drops a jar of premium pasta sauce and breaks it, the store has just lost the profit from that entire shopping trip. If a cashier accidentally undercharges for a pound of grapes, the margin for that hour evaporates. This sliver of profit is what remains from the much larger gross margin, which according to benchmark data from 2007, averaged approximately 29.3%. Many observers confuse gross margin with net profit. They see a markup of 30% and assume the grocer is wealthy. But this 29.3% is the initial pool of money available after paying suppliers for the products on the shelves. It is not profit, it is the operating budget. It must cover every single operational expense before any profit can be realized. It pays for the lights, the refrigeration, the cashier's wages, the parking lot maintenance, and the corporate taxes. By the time those hungry mouths are fed, only 1.6% remains. How does a CEO manage a business where a 1% variance in costs can lead to bankruptcy? They do it through data. To survive, let alone thrive, on a 1.6% margin, supermarkets are obsessively managed using a specific set of efficiency metrics. In the corporate boardrooms of Kroger, Publix, and Walmart, these numbers are analyzed daily. These key performance indicators (KPIs) are not just a matter of corporate reporting, they are the vital signs that guide day-to-day operations. They tell the store manager which aisles are performing, which employees are efficient, and where the bleeding is happening. Sales per square foot. The real estate metric, the first battleground, is the physical floor. Supermarkets are massive, and every inch of concrete costs money in rent, heating, and cooling. Therefore, every inch must pay its rent. Sales per square foot. This metric measures the store's average revenue generated for every foot of selling area. The 2024 average is 18.5 cents per week. This number drives the psychology of store layout. It is a critical measure of real estate efficiency, informing decisions about store layout, product placement, and overall merchandising effectiveness. It explains why high-margin impulse items like gum and magazines are placed at the checkout. They have a small footprint but high value, driving up the sales per square foot of the front end. Conversely, low turnover items are ruthlessly culled. A high sales per square foot figure indicates that the physical space is being used productively to drive revenue. If a section of the store drops below this average, the planogram is rewritten and the products are evicted. Inventory turnover. The race against rot. The second constraint is time. Unlike a furniture store or a car dealership, a supermarket's inventory is dying. Inventory turnover, also known as stock turn, this KPI measures the number of times a store's inventory is sold and replaced over a given period. A healthy supermarket turns over its inventory 12 to 20 times per year. This means the entire store is effectively emptied and refilled roughly every 3 to 4 weeks. For fresh departments like produce and seafood, the turnover is measured in days, not weeks. Rapid turnover is strategically vital for two reasons. It minimizes the amount of working capital tied up in unsold stock, and more importantly, it is the primary defense against spoilage, a massive source of financial loss in the grocery business. Cash flow in a supermarket is all about velocity. If a grocer buys a pallet of strawberries on credit and sells them within 2 days, they have generated cash before they even have to pay the supplier. But if those strawberries sit for 5 days, they become a liability, literally rotting capital. Sales per labor hour. The efficiency of movement. The third and perhaps most contentious metric involves the human element. Sales per labor hour. In 2024, the average supermarket generated 237.76 cents in sales for every hour of paid labor. This metric turns the workforce into a mathematical variable. Store managers are given strict labor budgets based on projected sales. If sales are projected to be low on a Tuesday morning, the manager must cut hours to maintain the 237 to 176 cents ratio. Given that payroll is one of the most dominant operational costs, this metric is a crucial measure of labor efficiency and productivity, directly impacting the bottom line. This creates a high-pressure environment for employees. Stockers must move cases at a specific pace, cashiers are timed on their items per minute scan rate. In a 1.6% margin industry, inefficiency is not just an annoyance, it is an existential threat. Why would anyone enter a business with such punishing economics? The answer lies in volume. The industry's financial structure necessitates a massive physical and operational scale. You cannot run a small grocery store with these margins, you need to run an empire. There are 5,005 supermarkets in the United States, and the average store size is an expansive 42,453 square feet. These are not corner stores, they are warehouses accessible to the public. This immense scale is not a strategy for generating outsized profits, but rather a fundamental requirement to achieve the sales volume necessary to make the tiny 1.6% margin economically viable. Think of it this way: 1.6% of 100,000 revenue is negligible, but 1.6% of $1 trillion is a fortune. The trillion-dollar revenue figure is the consequence of a business model that must sell an enormous quantity of goods just to cover its own vast operational footprint. This chapter has outlined the what of the supermarket industry: the sales, the profits, and the metrics. But to understand the why, to understand precisely why these margins are so thin, we must first dissect the enormous costs that the gross margin is forced to cover. As we move into Chapter 2, we will tear apart the profit and loss statement to see exactly where the money goes, from the farm to the landfill. If you look strictly at the price tag on a shelf, the grocery business seems like a reasonably profitable endeavor. A box of cereal that costs the grocer $3 settling might be sold to the consumer for $4.25. To the untrained eye, this markup appears robust, a healthy cushion that suggests financial stability. This markup is known as the gross margin. While a gross margin around 29.3% might seem healthy in other industries, retail clothing, for instance, often sees margins double that. In the world of grocery retail, it is a rapidly dwindling resource. Point du découp. It is a melting ice cube. This figure represents the starting point from which all operational costs must be paid, and it is quickly consumed by a vast and complex array of expenses. The gross margin is the deception of the grocery P&L statement. It promises wealth but delivers pennies. To understand how a trillion-dollar industry ends up with a 1.6% net profit, we must track the journey of every dollar that crosses the checkout scanner. This chapter deconstructs the primary cost centers that leave so little room for profit, using benchmark data from 2007-2008 to reveal how the business of selling food is dominated by the costs of labor, inventory, and the physical space itself. The supermarket is, fundamentally, a service business. Despite the rise of self-checkout lanes and digital apps, the core operation relies heavily on human beings to unload trucks, stock shelves, slice deli meats, bake bread, and bag groceries. Consequently, labor is not just a line item, it is the financial gravity of the industry. Based on an analysis of the Food Marketing Bill from 2008, labor is the single largest component, accounting for a staggering 38.5% of the total cost to bring food from the farm to the consumer. This figure encompasses the entire value chain, but when we zoom in specifically on the retailer, the numbers remain daunting. For retailers, this breaks down into two major categories that directly impact profitability. Direct payroll. The wages paid to cashiers, stockers, and managers constitute 11.2% of sales. Employee benefits, health insurance, pensions, and other perks add another 3.6%. When you combine these two figures, they consume 14.8 percentage points of the 29.3% gross margin. Let that sink in. Before the rent is paid, before the lights are turned on, and before a single refrigerator is powered, more than half of the available gross margin is spent on labor. This cost structure creates a rigid management challenge. Depending on the size and operating model of the store, whether it is a lean discount operator or a full-service premium market, total labor and staffing costs can range from 7% to 25% of its total costs. This variability makes labor efficiency the single most critical factor in operational cost control. It explains why store managers are obsessed with scheduling. A slow Tuesday afternoon with too many cashiers on the clock isn't just inefficient, it is actively destroying the day's profit. While labor claims the largest share of the operational margin, the actual cost of the physical products remains the titan of the balance sheet. The cost of goods sold (COGS), the price the retailer pays to suppliers for its inventory, is the highest absolute operating cost. Inventory can account for an enormous 78% of that. This outsourcing in Mondbestand is a multi-million-dollar budget item involving everything from fixing leaky roofs to repairing broken scanner guns. When we layer these costs on top of one another, the picture becomes clear. When combined, these four major cost categories, labor, inventory, rent, and utilities, consume the vast majority of the gross margin. The math of the vanishing profit looks something like this. Start with $1 of sales, immediately remove 75 cents to pay the supplier COGS. You have 25 cents left gross margin, remove 15 cents for labor payroll benefits. You have 10 cents left, remove costs for rent, energy, packaging, transportation, and taxes. You are left with roughly 1.6 cents. Each of these represents a significant, non-negotiable expense required to simply open the doors for business. They are the fixed realities of the trade. However, beyond these standard operational costs lies a unique and often underestimated financial drain that is specific to the grocery industry. A clothing store can let a shirt sit on a rack for 6 months, eventually it will sell. A hardware store can keep a hammer in inventory for years. But a grocery store is fighting biology. This hidden expense, food waste, is more than just a line item, it is a ghost in the aisles that has twice the financial impact of the industry's entire profit margin. In the next chapter, we will explore this $162 billion tragedy and how it serves as the silent killer of retail profitability. In the previous chapters, we explored the brutal arithmetic of the supermarket industry, the massive scale, the razor-thin margins, and the relentless operational costs that leave a net profit of just 1.6%. But there is a final devastating variable in this equation that does not exist in other retail sectors. If a clothing retailer fails to sell a sweater this season, they can discount it next season. If an electronics store cannot move a television, it can sit in a warehouse for months without losing its fundamental value. But in a supermarket, the inventory is a ticking time bomb. Every apple, every carton of milk, and every cut of steak is in a biological race against decomposition. Food waste is more than just an environmental or ethical concern for the grocery industry. It is a colossal and unique financial burden. It acts as a hidden tax on profitability, representing a constant drain on resources and a direct inhibitor of financial success. This chapter will quantify the scale of this problem and explore how it directly impacts the fragile economics of the modern supermarket. To understand the financial damage food waste inflicts on a grocery store, we must first look at the enormity of the issue on a national level. The scale of food waste in the United States is staggering. According to a landmark study by the U.S. Department of Agriculture (USDA), analyzing data from 2010, the volume of wasted potential is almost difficult to comprehend. £133 billion, this is the amount of food that went uneaten in a single year. To visualize this, imagine a line of fully loaded 18-wheeler trucks stretching from New York to Los Angeles and back again. That is the weight of the food we discard. 31% of supply. This represented 31% of the total available food supply at the retail and consumer levels. Nearly one-third of the entire output of the American agricultural system, the water, the labor, the fertilizer, the transportation, is ultimately utilized for nothing. The financial cost, the retail value of this loss was an almost incomprehensible $162 billion. Where does this value go? It does not vanish into thin air. Much of this discarded food ends up in landfills, where it decomposes and generates methane. Food is the single largest component in U.S. municipal solid waste, making up 22% of the total. For the grocer, this adds insult to injury. They pay to acquire the food, they lose the revenue when it spoils, and often, they must pay waste management fees to have it hauled away. While the aggregate numbers are shocking, the specific impact on the supermarket's P&L statement is where the true business crisis lies. For supermarkets, the financial implications of food waste are profound and direct. In the world of 1.6% margins, every penny counts. But food waste isn't measured in pennies, it is measured in billions. The most telling statistic reveals the outsized impact of this problem on the industry's bottom line. Wasted food from the retail sector is valued at about twice the amount of profit from food sales. This is the central tragedy of the supermarket paradox. The industry literally throws away double the amount of money it actually keeps as profit. However, this grim statistic also reveals a hidden opportunity. It creates powerful financial leverage. Because the cost of waste is double the industry's 1.6% net profit margin, every dollar saved by reducing spoilage and shrinkage has a disproportionately large and positive impact on profitability. Consider the math. To make 1.0 Zen in net profit, a store must sell roughly $60 worth of groceries. But if that store can prevent 1.0 Zen of food waste, that dollar flows directly to the bottom line minus the cost of goods. Therefore, waste reduction is arguably the single most potent lever a grocer can pull to improve its financial performance. It is far more effective than raising prices or cutting labor hours. Why do efficient, data-driven corporations allow billions of dollars to rot on their shelves? Food loss at the retail level stems from a combination of operational challenges and the inherent nature of perishable goods. It is a battle against entropy that the grocer often loses. The cold chain failure. The modern supermarket relies on a complex cold chain to keep products fresh. However, technology is not infallible. Equipment malfunction, faulty cold storage or refrigeration units can lead to catastrophic spoilage. If a freezer case fails in the middle of the night, thousands of dollars of inventory can be lost in hours. The forecasting problem predicting human appetite is an imperfect science. Overordering, inaccurate demand forecasting results in excess inventory that cannot be sold before it expires. Stores must walk a fine line. If they order too little, they face out of stocks and angry customers. If they order too much, they face shrinkage and waste. The beauty contest. Perhaps the most frustrating cause of waste is aesthetic. American consumers have been trained to expect perfection in their produce. Culling of blemished produce. A significant amount of produce is discarded simply because it does not meet aesthetic standards, even if it is perfectly edible. An apple with a small bruise or a carrot that is slightly crooked is often deemed unsellable and tossed into the bin. Data from the Economic Research Service (ERS) highlights just how vulnerable fresh produce is to this dynamic. The loss rates vary dramatically by product. Papayas. This fragile fruit suffers a staggering loss rate of 43.1%, meaning nearly half of all papayas entering the retail space never make it to a customer's stomach. Pineapples. These have the second highest loss rate among fruits. Turnip greens. The highest loss rate for vegetables is found here, likely due to their rapid wilting point. To combat these losses, stores rely on disciplined operational practices. The most common is the first-in, first-out FIFO stocking method, which ensures older products are sold before newer ones. Additionally, stores are learning to right-size produce displays to match actual customer demand, rather than overstocking solely for the visual appeal of abundance. Finally, a significant driver of food waste originates with consumer behavior but has a direct feedback loop that impacts retailers. It is a problem of semantics. A widespread misunderstanding of expiration labels leads to the premature disposal of food that is still safe and wholesome. It is estimated that more than 80% of Americans discard perfectly good, consumable food because they misinterpret these labels. The confusion stems from the lack of standardization and the difference between quality and safety best used by the AEVI. This is merely a manufacturer's suggestion related to peak quality and flavor. It does not mean the food is unsafe. Use by this generally applies to highly perishable products like raw meat or unpasteurized cheese and relates directly to food safety. When a customer throws away a can of soup because it is one day past its best if used by date, they are wasting money. But this behavior also affects retailers, who are forced to pull these items from shelves days before these dates to ensure customers don't see expired goods. This confusion contributes to waste at both the consumer and retail levels, adding yet another pressure point on the industry's margins. Faced with these immense costs from the $162 billion national waste bill to the 1.6% profit squeeze, supermarkets have developed a set of traditional strategies designed to protect and expand their tiny profits. In the next chapter, we will look at how they fight back using pricing psychology, private labels, and product mix. We have established the grim reality of the supermarket financial model, a business besieged by high labor costs, massive operational overhead, and the constant erosion of capital through spoilage. Facing a net profit baseline of 1.6% and a waste bill that doubles that figure, grocery executives cannot simply sit back and hope for the best. They must actively engineer profitability into every square foot of the store. In response to these immense cost pressures and the unique financial drain of food waste, supermarkets have honed several key strategies to maximize profitability from the products they sell. These are the traditional levers of the trade, tactics developed over decades to manipulate consumer psychology and product economics. These strategies serve three distinct purposes: to protect fragile margins from further erosion, to drive the essential sales volume needed to cover fixed costs, and to strategically offset low-profit staples like milk and eggs with higher-margin goods like vitamins and prepared foods. This chapter explores the core tactics that have long defined the business of making money in the grocery aisle. The first lever is the price tag itself. Pricing in the grocery industry is not merely a reflection of cost plus profit, it is a delicate psychological balance between attracting customers and maintaining profitability. If prices are too high, volume drops, and spoilage increases. If prices are too low, the 1.6% margin vanishes entirely. Retailers typically align their entire brand identity with one of two primary pricing models: everyday low pricing (EDLP). This strategy, most famously championed by Walmart and discount grocers like Aldi, involves maintaining consistently low prices across the board. The logic: by keeping prices stable, the retailer minimizes the need for frequent deep discounts. This smooths out demand, making inventory forecasting easier and reducing the bullwhip effect in the supply chain. It attracts the budget-conscious shopper who values consistency over the thrill of the hunt. High-low HL. This is the traditional supermarket model used by many regional chains. It features higher regular prices on most items but relies on frequent and aggressive promotions, sales, and discounts to attract customers and drive traffic. The logic: the high-low operator knows that consumers are price-sensitive on known value items like a gallon of milk or a pound of ground beef, but price-blind on others like spices or specialty cheeses. By advertising a shocking discount on the front page of the weekly circular, they get the customer in the door. The trade-off: While promotional tactics and discounts may decrease the margin on the specific item being advertised, sometimes even selling it at a loss, known as a loss leader, they are an essential tool in a fiercely competitive market. They are critical for generating the high sales volume required to make the overall business model work. The grocer bets that once the customer is inside to buy the discounted steak, they will also buy the full-price potatoes, salad dressing, and wine. Perhaps the most significant shift in grocery profitability over the last 20 years has been the evolution of the store brand. Once relegated to the bottom shelf in plain white packaging, private label products are now the retailer's most potent defense against margin compression. They represent the single most powerful tool a retailer has for margin expansion, offering a significant financial advantage over their national brand counterparts. The economics of the store brand. Why push a store brand can of beans over a national brand? The answer is simple math. The margin advantage. Private labels deliver gross margins that are 25–30% higher than national brands. Cost structure. This margin boost is a direct result of manufacturing economics. Private labels boast 40–50% lower manufacturing costs, and crucially, a reduced reliance on expensive advertising and complex distribution networks. A national brand like Coca-Cola spends billions on global marketing to create demand. The supermarket's private label cola simply drafts off that demand by sitting right next to the red can on the shelf, costing the retailer almost nothing in marketing. The strategic importance of private labels cannot be overstated. Retailers are no longer content to be passive distributors of other companies' brands, they are becoming brand owners themselves. In 2024, over 5% of US retailers identified their private label programs as their number one growth driver. This strategy has achieved total market saturation. In 2024, an astonishing 99.9% of US households purchased at least one private label grocery item. This demonstrates widespread consumer acceptance and trust, moving private labels from a budget option to a smart option. Profitable aisles, the mix that pays the bills. Not all aisles are created equal. A supermarket manager views the store as a topographical map of profitability. Some areas are valleys of low-margin staples, and others are peaks of high profit. To offset the razor-thin margins on staple items like milk, bread, and eggs, which are often competitively priced to match the store down the street, supermarkets strategically merchandise and promote product categories that carry significantly higher markups. By understanding which aisles generate the most profit, stores can better balance their overall profitability. If a customer only buys milk and eggs, the store likely breaks even or loses money. The goal of the store layout is to tempt that customer into the high-margin zones. Key high-margin categories include prepared foods. The rotisserie chicken and the salad bar are gold mines. They convert raw, lower-cost ingredients into service items, commanding a premium price for convenience. Vitamins and body care products. These items have high price points, small physical footprints, and unlike produce, they do not rot in a week. Fresh coffee and bulk foods. These allow for high markups on bulk commodities. Cheese and deli meat. The service counter adds perceived value, allowing for higher margins than pre-packaged alternatives. Frozen foods. Long shelf life and high density make this a profitable sector. Produce. Despite the high waste discussed in Chapter 3, successful produce sections can command high margins if managed perfectly. By mastering pricing, championing private labels, and strategically managing product mix, grocers can protect their margins inside the store. They build a basket where the losses on the milk are covered by the profits on the multivitamin. However, the battle for profit isn't just fought with the customer. Another crucial element of profitability lies in the supplier relationship, another battlefield where grocers must fight to protect their fractional profits. Behind the scenes, a high-stakes game of negotiation determines who gets the best spot on the shelf and who pays for the privilege. To the average shopper, a supermarket shelf is a passive object, a metal rack holding boxes of cereal or jars of pasta sauce. It appears to be nothing more than a logistical necessity, a place to store inventory until a customer decides to buy it. However, in the eyes of the grocery industry, The shelf is something far more valuable. It is not merely a place for storage. It is some of the most valuable and fiercely contested promotional real estate in the business world. Slychtum. It is the Fifth Avenue of the food world. Just as a fashion brand will pay exorbitant rents to have a storefront in a prime Manhattan location, food manufacturers are willing to pay massive sums to secure a prime spot at the consumer's eye level. This reality has created a complex and powerful dynamic between retailers, who control access to the customer, and product manufacturers, who need that access to survive. The retailer acts as the gatekeeper. A product can be delicious, innovative, and competitively priced, but if it is placed on the bottom shelf in a dark corner, it will likely fail. Conversely, a mediocre product placed on an eye-level end cap display at the end of an aisle can become a bestseller. This dynamic has given rise to the common, yet controversial practice of slotting fees, direct payments from manufacturers to retailers for the right to occupy a space on the shelf. These fees are the invisible currency of the grocery trade, a shadow economy that dictates what products American consumers see and buy. To understand why slotting fees exist, one must first grasp the fundamental misalignment of incentives between a retailer like Kroger or Safeway and a manufacturer like General Mills or Kraft. They are partners, but their financial goals are often at odds. According to economic analysis from the Department of Justice, the core issue stems from a divergence in profit motives, the retailer's objective. A retailer's primary objective is to maximize its own profit, not the combined profit of itself and the manufacturer. The retailer cares about the total profitability of the cereal category, not necessarily whether brand A outsells brand B. The margin gap. The manufacturer's profit margin on an incremental sale is substantially higher than the retailer's treat. The manufacturer, if a cereal company sells one extra box, their marginal cost is low, mostly grain and cardboard, so their profit on that extra unit is high. The retailer, as we established in Chapter 1, the retailer's margin is razor thin, often just a few cents on the dollar. The incentive mismatch. Because of this disparity, the retailer lacks the financial incentive to provide the amount of promotional shelf space, such as a high-visibility end cap display or eye-level placement, that would be optimal for the manufacturer. This creates a classic market failure. But the manufacturer wants the premium space and would profit handsomely from it. The retailer has the space but makes so little profit on the extra sales that it isn't worth the effort to displace other products to feature it. The retailer underinvests in promotion because it only captures a tiny fraction of the total profit generated by an additional sale. To bridge this gap, manufacturers and retailers must enter into a separate contract to correct the incentive mismatch. The manufacturer effectively says, "I know you don't make much money selling my product, so I will pay you a lump sum to make it worth your while." Enter the slotting fee. A slotting fee is a direct, per-unit time payment from a manufacturer to a retailer to secure promotional shelf space for new or established products. Crucially, the structure of this payment matters. It is almost always a fixed fee, a check for $10,000, for example, rather than a simple wholesale price discount reducing the cost of the item by $0.10. Why not just lower the wholesale price? The answer lies in the brutal competitiveness of the retail sector. The rent dissipation theory. If the compensation were merely a temporary wholesale price discount, intense price competition among retailers would force them to pass that discount on to consumers in the form of a lower retail price. If manufacturer A lowers the price of soap for retailer X must lower the shelf price to compete with retailer Y. The outcome? This would effectively dissipate the payment that was intended to compensate the retailer for the valuable shelf space. The retailer ends up with lower revenue, the consumer gets a cheaper product, but the retailer still hasn't been paid for the valuable real estate they provided. A fixed upfront slotting fee prevents this rent dissipation and ensures the retailer is directly rewarded for allocating its prime real estate. It guarantees the grocer a profit for the shelf space, regardless of the price war happening in the aisle. A controversial practice, pay-to-play? Despite their sound economic logic in terms of efficiency, slotting fees remain a highly controversial practice. To many industry observers and regulators, they look less like rent and more like a pay-to-play scheme or even commercial bribery. The primary concern is that they can function as a significant barrier to entry for smaller manufacturers. Imagine a small local bakery that invents a revolutionary new cookie. They might have a better product than the national conglomerate, but they likely lack the massive capital reserves required to pay the entry fee to get onto the shelves of a national chain. These fees can run into thousands of dollars per item per store. For a national rollout, the slotting fees alone can reach millions of dollars before a single product is sold. Critics argue this can stifle competition, limit innovation, and reduce consumer choice by favoring large, established manufacturers with deep pockets. It creates a feedback loop where the rich get richer because only they can afford the visibility required to stay rich. The theory that slotting fees are a payment for promotional exposure is strongly supported by real-world data. Not all aisles command the same fees. An analysis of which product categories use slotting fees most frequently reveals a clear pattern. Manufacturers with the most to gain from incremental sales are the ones most willing to pay for shelf space. Why the difference? It comes down to the manufacturer's margin. High-value-add products in categories where slotting is frequent, like frozen dinners or soda, have an average value added a shipment value of 63.1%. The other stat the slosive because the pack. An employee must walk the store aisles to find the 30 to 50 items in the basket. They must weigh produce, check expiration dates, and text the customer about substitutions if an item is out of stock. Cost. This manual labor costs approximately $8 per order. Incremental cost at 2. The last mile. Once the order is picked and bagged, it must be transported originatory. That just for growth. E-commerce grocery sales surged from just 3.4% of total sales in 2019 to 10.2% in 2022. Operational shock. During peak periods of the pandemic, some retailers reported staggering 300–500% increases in online orders. This surge placed unprecedented strain on fulfillment systems designed for in-store shopping. Supermarkets that were built to handle foot traffic were suddenly converted into ad hoc warehouses. Aisles were clogged with professional pickers' inventory systems desynchronized, and the delicate financial balance of the store was thrown into chaos. What looked like a sales boom on the top line was a margin disaster on the bottom line. The core of the digital dilemma lies in the high incremental costs of fulfilling an online order manually. When a customer shops in-store, they perform the work of picking and delivery for free. They walk the aisles, they select the produce, they bag the items often, and they drive the goods home. In the online model, the retailer must pay employees or contractors to perform these tasks. Using a standard $100 online grocery basket as an example, the math is stark and unforgiving. The starting point: razor-thin profit. We begin with the standard economics established in Chapter 1. On a $100 sale, after paying for the food, the building, and the utilities, the supermarket's average net profit is $1.60. This is the maximum cushion available to absorb any new costs. Incremental cost at 1. The pick fulfilling this order online adds new, significant expenses that do not exist for an in-store shopper. The first is the pick. An employee must walk the store aisles to find the 30 to 50 items in the basket. They must weigh produce, check expiration dates, and text the customer about substitutions if an item is out of stock. Cost. This manual labor costs approximately $8 per order. Incremental cost at 2. The last mile. Once the order is picked and bagged, it must be transported. This is the notorious last mile problem. Whether the store uses its own van or a third-party courier, getting the order from the store to the customer's home is incredibly expensive. It involves fuel, vehicle maintenance, insurance, and driver wages. Cost. This delivery leg costs another $8. The financial result: a deep loss. When we sum these costs, the economic reality becomes clear. The total incremental cost to fulfill the order is $16 for picking the delivery. When this $16 per for pick fulfilling this order online adds new significant expenses that do not exist for an in-store shopper. The first is the pick. An employee must walk the store aisles to find the 30 to 50 items in the basket. They must weigh produce, check expiration dates, and text the customer about substitutions if an item is out of stock. Cost. This manual labor costs approximately $8 per order. Incremental cost at 2. The last mile. Once the order is picked and bagged, it must be transported. This is the notorious last mile problem. Whether the store uses its own van or a third-party courier, getting the order from the store to the customer's home is incredibly expensive. It involves fuel, vehicle maintenance, insurance, and driver wages. Cost. This delivery leg costs another $8. The financial result. A deep loss. When we sum these costs, the economic reality becomes clear. The total incremental cost to fulfill the order is $16 for $8 for picking the and $8 per delivery. When this $16 cost is set against the initial $1 sex profit, the outcome is a net loss of $14.40 on every $100 online order. This model is fundamentally net margin destructive. It defies the basic principle of scaling a business. Usually, the more you sell, the more money you make. Here, the more a grocer sells online through manual fulfillment, the more money it loses. A grocer seeing 20% growth in online sales is essentially watching their profitability bleed out at an accelerated rate. One might ask, can't they just pick faster? The answer is, unfortunately, no, not within the current infrastructure. Using existing retail stores as quasi warehouses for online fulfillment is particularly inefficient. Grocery stores are designed for browsing, not logistical speed. They are laid out to maximize dwell time, to make customers walk past the impulse buys on the end caps. This is the exact opposite of an efficient warehouse layout, which is designed to minimize travel time. The speed limit. The low efficiency rate of manual in-store picking averages only 15 to 25 orders per hour. Compare this to an Amazon warehouse where items are brought to the picker, and the disparity is obvious. The congestion professional pickers competing for space with regular customers creates a degraded experience for everyone. Carts block aisles, stockouts happen faster than shelves can be refilled, and the store environment suffers. Furthermore, managing online orders often involves integrating with third-party platforms like Instacart and DoorDash. While these platforms provide the labor and the marketplace, they add another layer of operational complexity and cost. They also insert a wedge between the retailer and the customer, stripping the grocer of valuable data and brand loyalty. This leaves grocery executives facing a profound strategic dilemma. On one hand, the financial math says to shut down online operations immediately. Losing $14 on every order is unsustainable. On the other hand, the market reality makes this impossible. They cannot afford to ignore the powerful consumer shift to e-commerce. If Kroger or Walmart were to stop offering delivery, customers would simply defect to Amazon or a competitor who does. To ignore e-commerce would be to cede market share and risk becoming irrelevant. This is the trap. Participating in the digital marketplace using their existing infrastructure and traditional labor models is a direct path to destroying their already thin profit margins. But not participating is a path to slow death by obsolescence. This inescapable tension has created a powerful strategic imperative, forcing the industry to seek the only viable long-term solution: automation. The industry has realized it cannot human its way out of this problem. It must build a new kind of infrastructure where robots, not people, do the heavy lifting. In the next chapter, we will explore how robotics and artificial intelligence are stepping in to rewrite the unit economics of the online basket, turning that $14.40 loss back into a profit. In the previous chapter, we outlined the existential crisis facing the modern supermarket, the digital dilemma. The consumer demand for online grocery delivery is skyrocketing, yet the traditional method of fulfilling these orders, sending a human being to push a cart through a store, is a financial disaster. It turns a razor-thin profit into a deep, hemorrhaging loss. Faced with this mathematical dead end, the industry has been forced to look for a radical alternative. It cannot simply work harder, it must work entirely differently. Automation in the grocery industry is no longer a futuristic novelty or a PR stunt to impress shareholders, it is an economic necessity. It stands as the primary strategic response to the dual pressures of relentlessly rising labor costs and the margin-destroying economics of e-commerce. If the cost of human labor makes the 1.6 profit impossible, the only solution is to remove the human from the equation as much as possible. To make online grocery fulfillment economically viable, retailers must fundamentally re-engineer their processes, moving from a model of store picking to one of industrial manufacturing. This chapter explores the key technologies that are rescuing the digital business model from the brink of unprofitability, transforming the grocery supply chain from a labor-intensive service into a high-speed, automated assembly line trite. The modern fulfillment center, often referred to as a customer fulfillment center (CFC) or a dark store, looks nothing like a supermarket. There are no decorated end caps, no mood lighting, and often, no people. Instead, these spaces are being transformed by a suite of robotic and automated systems that work in concert to achieve unprecedented levels of speed and efficiency. The goal of this technology is simple: eliminate the two biggest costs in fulfillment, space and time. The Cube, Automated Storage and Retrieval Systems ASARS. The first challenge is storage. In a traditional supermarket, products are spread out over tens of thousands of square feet to allow customers to walk between them. This air is expensive. Modern automation solves this with Automated Storage and Retrieval Systems ASARS. These systems abandon the concept of aisles entirely. Instead, they utilize high-density three-dimensional grids. Products are stored in bins stacked on top of one another, creating a massive cube of inventory. Robotic shuttles or cranes navigate the top of this grid, dropping down to retrieve specific bins as needed. The efficiency gains are massive. Space optimization. ASARS can achieve 85–90% improvements in storage density compared to conventional warehousing. By eliminating aisles, retailers can store 10 times the inventory in the same footprint. Speed. These robots do not get tired, they do not get lost, and they move at breakneck speeds, reducing item retrieval times by up to 60%. Solving the walking problem, goods to person GTP. The greatest inefficiency in manual fulfillment is walking. In traditional warehouses or stores, workers can spend 50–70% of their time simply walking between pick locations to find an item. They are effectively being paid to commute, not to work. Goods to person GTP technologies flip this dynamic on its head. Instead of the person going to the tomato sauce comes to the person. The hive mind, systems like the hive technology pioneered by Ocado exemplify this. In these systems, thousands of robots swarm over a grid, grabbing bins and delivering them to stationary human pickers at the edge of the grid. The productivity leap. This eliminates the wasted walking time entirely. The human picker stands at a station, and products are presented to them in a continuous stream, dramatically boosting productivity. The worker becomes a stationary operator rather than a wandering gatherer. The new labor force, autonomous mobile robots AMRs. While ASARS systems are powerful, they are often rigid, bolted-down infrastructure. To add flexibility to the floor, retailers are deploying autonomous mobile robots AMRs. Unlike fixed conveyor belts that rigidly dictate the flow of goods, AMRs are flexible robots that navigate fulfillment center floors independently to transport goods. They look like motorized sleds or small platforms, using LiDAR and cameras to avoid obstacles and people. Scalability. If a retailer has a surge in orders like before Thanksgiving, they can simply add more AMRs to the floor. Throughput. This adaptability allows them to improve throughput by 28–45% compared to fixed systems, especially during periods of high or volatile demand. The final frontier. Robotic picking arms. The hardest problem in grocery automation is the pick itself. Picking up a box of cereal is easy for a robot. Picking up a ripe peach without bruising it, or grabbing a slippery bag of frozen peas, is an immense engineering challenge. However, the technology is catching up. Robotic picking arms, equipped with advanced computer vision and specialized soft grippers, are increasingly capable of handling the diverse shapes and sizes of grocery items. Vision and touch. These arms see the item, calculate the best grasping point, and use suction or soft fingers to lift it. Accuracy. Current systems have achieved success rates exceeding 95% for standardized packaged goods and are rapidly improving their ability to handle delicate and irregular items like fresh produce. Pure. This no wave loss is a if the AI predicts a heat wave, it moves ice cream and water to the top of the ASARS grid for faster picking. This precision reduces spoilage in perishable categories by 20–40%. By directly attacking the waste problem discussed in Chapter 3. The perfect path. Route optimization. Inside the fulfillment center, traffic jams are fatal to efficiency. AI optimizes robot and worker travel paths in real time, ensuring that thousands of robots moving at high speeds never collide and always take the shortest route. Impact. This orchestration reduces in-center travel distances by 20–35%, saving energy and time. Order batching and quality control. The AI also manages the complexity of multiple orders. By intelligently grouping orders for picking batching, the system ensures that a robot retrieving a bin of apples can serve 5 different customer orders simultaneously, rather than making 5 separate trips. Impact. This efficiency reduces late deliveries by 30–45%. Poor quality assurance. Furthermore, computer vision systems installed over the picking stations can automatically identify damaged products or incorrect items before they are bagged. This leads to a 45–60% reduction in customer complaints, protecting the brand's reputation. Keeping the lights on. Predictive maintenance. Finally, the AI protects the machinery itself. By monitoring equipment health in real time, listening to the vibrations of motors and checking battery temperatures, AI can predict failures before they happen. Impact. This allows for proactive repairs, reducing unplanned downtime by 35–45%. In a high-volume center, an hour of downtime can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, making this insurance policy invaluable. The combined impact of these technologies, the density of the cube, the speed of the robots, and the intelligence of the AI, directly addresses the crippling unit economics of manual e-commerce fulfillment. Recall the manual fulfillment model. A human walking a store takes roughly 30 to 45 minutes to pick a standard 50-item order. The automated reality. A state-of-the-art automated facility can process that same 50-item grocery order in under 8 minutes. This is the game changer. By slashing the labor time by nearly 80%, the cost per order plummets. The $14.40 loss shrinks, and with enough volume, crosses the threshold into profitability. This massive leap in efficiency and speed is the critical enabler that makes online grocery a scalable and economically viable business. Automation has solved the physical problem of moving goods. But supermarkets are realizing they have another asset that is just as valuable as the food itself. And it requires a different kind of technology to monetize. In the next chapter, we will explore how grocers are transforming into media companies, selling not just produce but data. For a century, the supermarket business model was built on a single tangible transaction, exchanging food for currency. The value proposition was physical. The grocer acquired a good, transported it, displayed it, and sold it for a slight markup. As we have seen, this model is increasingly perilous, defined by 1.6% margins and existential threats from digital disruptors. However, as supermarkets navigate the challenges of the digital age, they are discovering that their most valuable asset may not be the food on their shelves, but the vast trove of first-party data about who buys it, when, and why. Every swipe of a loyalty card, every online search for gluten-free pasta, and every repeat purchase of diapers creates a data point. This realization has given rise to retail media networks (RMNs), a powerful and transformative new revenue stream. RMNs allow grocers to move beyond simply selling products and begin selling high-margin advertising services, fundamentally altering their business model. They are transforming from logistics companies into media publishers, effectively becoming the Google or Facebook of the food world. What exactly is a retail media network? In simple terms, it is a digital advertising platform owned and operated by the retailer. Traditionally, a brand like General Mills or Procter & Gamble would spend its advertising budget on television commercials, billboards, or social media ads to build brand awareness. Today, they are increasingly shifting that budget directly to the retailer. On these platforms, consumer packaged goods (CPG) brands pay the retailer to run targeted advertisements directly to customers on the grocer's website, mobile app, and other digital properties. When a customer opens a grocery app to search for coffee, and a sponsored listing for a specific brand of dark roast appears at the top of the results, that is the RMN in action. It is a paid placement, akin to a sponsored search result on Google, but it happens within the store's own digital ecosystem. Why are manufacturers willing to pay retailers for this privilege? The answer lies in the unique power of the grocery environment. This advertising is exceptionally valuable for CPG brands for 2 key reasons. The power of the point of purchase. Traditional advertising is often a top-of-funnel activity, trying to create awareness days or weeks before a purchase might happen. RMN advertising, however, strikes at the critical moment. The advertising appears at the exact moment the consumer is making a purchasing decision, making it highly effective. If a customer is looking at a digital shelf of pasta sauces, they are already in buying mode. Placing an ad there is far more likely to convert into a sale than showing a commercial during a sitcom. The Holy Grail: closed-loop attribution. The most significant advantage, however, is data. In traditional media, attribution is messy. If Coke runs a TV ad, they can only guess how many extra bottles were sold because of it. But in an RMN, the retailer owns both the ad platform and the cash register. Because the retailer controls both the advertising platform and the sales data, it can clearly demonstrate to the CPG brand how many sales were generated by a specific ad campaign. The loop. The retailer knows that user X saw the ad on Tuesday and bought the product on Thursday. The result. This closed-loop attribution is the holy grail of advertising. It provides mathematical certainty of return on ad spend ROAS, justifying higher ad rates. For a low-margin grocery business, the financial impact of RMNs is nothing short of revolutionary. It is an injection of pure profit into a business that is traditionally starved for it. The numbers paint a clear picture of a new profit horizon. Massive growth. The scale of this new market is breathtaking. RMN revenue is projected to reach $176.9 billion globally by 2025. Extraordinary margins. But the revenue number is less important than the margin number. The key economic insight is that RMNs operate at gross margins exceeding 80%. Compare this to the core business. Selling a can of corn, 29% gross margin before expenses, 1.6% net margin. Selling an ad for that can of corn, 80% margin. This creates a powerful multiplier effect. An analysis shows that $1 of RMN revenue generates 15 to 20 times more net profit than $1 of traditional grocery sales. This disparity has led industry observers to label RMNs a source of margin salvation, providing a critical profit buffer that protects the core, low-margin business from price wars, rising operational costs, and other competitive pressures. Essentially, the grocery store can afford to sell milk at break-even prices if it is making a fortune selling the digital real estate around the milk. However, pivoting from selling produce to selling pixels is not without its challenges. Despite their immense potential, maximizing the value of RMNs requires overcoming a significant operational hurdle: data fragmentation. The industry currently faces a walled garden problem, where each retailer's RMN functions as a data silo with its own unique and inconsistent reporting metrics. The advertiser's nightmare. A CPG brand like Kraft Heinz sells products across hundreds of different retailers: Walmart, Kroger, Costco, Target, etc. If each of these retailers builds their own proprietary ad network with different rules and metrics, managing a national campaign becomes a logistical nightmare. Inconsistent metrics. One platform might report total sales, while another reports gross merchandise value, making it nearly impossible for CPG brands to compare performance across networks. This fragmentation creates massive inefficiencies. Brand and agency teams report spending 20% to 40% of their workweek manually downloading, cleaning, and merging spreadsheet data from different RMNs just to understand what is happening. This friction limits the scalability of RMNs. If it is too hard to buy the ads, brands will spend their money elsewhere. Realizing the full, multi-billion-dollar promise of retail media will require significant investment in unified data platforms capable of automatically harmonizing data from all partners into a single, actionable dashboard. Retailers are now partnering with ad tech firms to standardize their offerings, making it easier for big brands to spend big money. As retailers build out these sophisticated data capabilities, they are also continuing to make massive investments in the physical automation we discussed in Chapter 7. The two strategies work in tandem. Automation lowers the cost of fulfillment, while RMNs raise the ceiling on profitability. To see how these dual engines, physical automation and data monetization, come together in the real world, we must look at the industry's most ambitious experiment. The following case study explores how one company, Kroger, integrated a groundbreaking automation strategy to transform its business from the ground up. The journey of the modern supermarket is one of relentless adaptation. Born from a simple model of selling physical goods, a self-service innovation that replaced the general store, has been forced by the pressures of thin margins, high costs, and digital disruption to evolve into something unrecognizable to its founders. It is no longer enough to simply stack beans on a shelf and wait for customers. To survive in an environment where net profits hover around 1.6%, the supermarket has transformed into a complex, technology-driven logistics and data powerhouse. The grocery store of the 21st century is, In reality, a real estate holding company, a digital advertising agency, a robotic manufacturing plant, and a data analytics firm, all disguised as a place to buy milk. This final chapter looks toward the horizon, exploring the emerging technologies and strategies that will define the next decade of grocery retail. It synthesizes the lessons of the previous chapters to describe how the industry will finally solve the fundamental supermarket paradox. In Chapter 9, we explored the massive Customer Fulfillment Centers (CFCs) built by Kroger and Ocado. These facilities are industrial giants, serving vast regions. However, the physics of delivery logistics dictates that while centralization solves the picking problem, it does not solve the delivery problem. Shipping a bag of groceries 90 miles is expensive, no matter how fast a robot picked it. Therefore, the next wave of innovation is smaller, more agile, and situated much closer to the customer. This is the era of the Micro-Fulfillment Center (MFC). Defining the MFC micro-fulfillment centers are emerging as a key trend to solve the expensive last-mile delivery problem. Unlike the sprawling 300,000 square foot sheds on the outskirts of town, MFCs are small, highly automated facilities, typically between 10,000 and 20,000 square feet. Because of their compact footprint, they can be squeezed into strategic locations, the back of an existing large supermarket, a repurposed parking garage, or a dark store in a dense urban neighborhood. The last mile advantage. The strategic value of the MFC is proximity. By placing inventory within a few miles of the consumer, the economics of delivery change drastically. Cost reduction. Their proximity allows retailers to reduce last-mile delivery costs by 26–32% compared to shipping from a distant centralized warehouse. When the driver only has to drive 2 miles instead of 20, fuel and labor costs plummet. Speed. This proximity also cuts delivery times by 30–45%. This enables the instant delivery economy, where customers can receive their orders in under an hour, a feat impossible for a remote regional hub. Capital efficiency for retailers who cannot afford the billion-dollar price tag of a Kroger-style network, MFCs offer a more accessible entry point. Investment. The capital investment for an MFC is significantly lower, ranging from $3 to $8 million compared to the $55–100 million required for a large-scale CFC. Scalability. This lower barrier to entry makes them a flexible and scalable solution. A retailer can test an MFC in one city without betting the entire company's balance sheet. Automated efficiency at small scale. Despite their smaller size, MFCs leverage powerful automation that rivals their larger cousins. They utilize dense shuttle systems that operate vertically, taking advantage of high ceilings in small footprints. Productivity. Robots in an MFC can pick approximately 600 units per hour UPH. The cost gap. This efficiency translates to a cost of just $3 per order to pick. Compare this to manual in-store picking, which averages only 100 UPH at a cost of $10 to $15 per order. The MFC bridges the gap. It offers the speed of automation with the location benefits of a local store. As automation becomes the industry standard, environmental considerations are playing an increasingly central role in the design of future fulfillment centers. The supermarket of tomorrow will be defined not just by speed, but by sustainable automation. In a low-margin business, energy efficiency is synonymous with cost savings. Robotic efficiency. Modern energy-efficient robotics have already reduced energy consumption by 30–45% over the last 5 years. New regenerative braking systems on robots allow them to harvest energy as they decelerate, much like an electric car. Holistic design. Future facilities will increasingly focus on reducing their carbon footprints through on-site renewable energy generation such as solar roofs on CFCs, AI-optimized delivery routes to minimize fuel consumption, and a greater reliance on biodegradable or reusable packaging materials. The future workforce. From pickers to technicians. The automation imperative discussed in Chapter 7 inevitably raises questions about human labor. The transformation of the supermarket will reshape the grocery workforce fundamentally. The demand for manual repetitive tasks, the heavy lifting of picking cans, stocking shelves and pushing carts, will decline. These are jobs that are physically taxing and, as we have seen, economically inefficient in a digital model. However, they will be replaced by a growing need for higher-skilled technical roles. 1. The robots cannot fix themselves yet, and the AI cannot strategize. The supermarket employee of the future will not be a stocker, they will be a robotics maintenance technician. a software fleet manager, or a data analyst. They will oversee complex automated systems rather than performing the labor themselves, shifting the labor cost from a variable expense hourly wages to a fixed investment in skilled talent. The supermarket industry is in the midst of a technological arms race. For 100 years, survival depended on mastering the paradox of selling immense volume on a fractional profit margin. Success was defined by who could sell a banana for the lowest price. Today, that core business, selling the banana, is becoming a low-margin utility, a chassis upon which a far more sophisticated enterprise must be built. The chassis is the food sales 1.6% margin. The engine is the automated fulfillment lowering costs. The fuel is the retail media network raising profits. The real competition is no longer just on price but on the efficiency of automation and the monetization of data. The future belongs not to the biggest but to the smartest and fastest. Success in the 21st century will depend on mastering the new fundamentals, building a high-tech logistics and data business on top of a traditional grocery foundation. Only by relentlessly innovating can these giants finally resolve the paradox that has defined their industry for a century, transforming the business of feeding the world into a sustainable, profitable, and digital enterprise.